What if the most powerful man who ever lived spent 7 years on his hands and knees, eating grass in a field, and that was the kindest thing that ever happened to him? What if the only direction a man can fall, when he has already climbed higher than anyone before him, is up? This is the story of Nebuchadnezzar. Not the statue, not the furnace, the man. The king who built a city the world called a wonder, who held the lives of nations in his fist, who was told by the heavens themselves that he would lose his mind and crawl in the dirt like an animal, and who lived to write about it in his own words, so that you would hear it 3,000 years later. It is a story about how far a human heart will climb to avoid one simple sentence, and about what it costs, finally, to say it. If a story about pride and the long road home speaks to something in you, take a moment now to subscribe, because what you are about to witness is one of the strangest mercies in all of Scripture. He was young when the city became his. Babylon. Say the word and it still hums with weight. The walls were so wide that chariots could race along the top of them, two abreast and never touch. The gate of the goddess Ishtar rose in glazed blue brick, the color of a deep sea, studded with golden bowls and dragons that seemed to move when the torchlight passed over them. And rising in terraces above the river, green against the brown of the plain, the gardens, trees and vines stacked toward the sky on a man-made mountain, watered by machines that lifted the river up to meet them. Travelers came from the ends of the earth simply to stand at the foot of it and crane their necks, to look up. Nebuchadnezzar built it, or rather, he finished what his father began and then made it his own, brick by brick, until you could not walk a street in that city without reading his name pressed into the clay. He had it stamped into the foundations. He had it carved where no human eye would ever see it again. He wanted the gods to know. He wanted the future to know. He wanted, perhaps, to know it himself on the nights when the question came, the question that comes to every man who has more than anyone has ever had, the question of whether it would last. He had a habit, when he could not sleep, of climbing to the highest roof of the palace and looking out over what he had made. The smell of the river, the cook fires, the distant sound of the city breathing, and he would feel it rise in his chest, that warm and terrible certainty. I did this. I am the one. From up here, every other man was small. From up here, you could not see faces. You could only see how far down it was to the ground. Years before, he had ridden his army west. There was a small, stubborn kingdom there, perched on a hill, with a temple to a god who had no image, a strange, invisible god the people called the Lord. Jerusalem. The city resisted, and Babylon did to it what Babylon did to stubborn things. The temple was stripped. The sacred cups of gold were carried off and stacked in the treasure house in Babylon like spoils, which is all they were to him. And among the captives marched back across the desert was a group of boys, the best of them, the clever ones, the well-formed ones, the sons of the defeated nobility, chosen to be taught the language and the wisdom of Babylon, and to serve in the king's court. The conqueror's habit: take a nation's future and raise it to call you father. One of those boys was named Daniel. Remember him, because the strange truth of this story is that the man who burned Daniel's home, who killed his people, who carried off the cups from his God's own house, this is the man Daniel would come to love. Not the way you love a friend, the way you love someone you are watching walk toward a cliff in the dark. The king did not notice the boy at first. Why would he? But there came a night when the king had a dream, and the dream sat on his chest like a stone when he woke, and he could not remember it. And the not remembering drove him to a fury that nearly emptied his court of every wise man in Babylon. His magicians could not tell him a dream, he could not even tell them. He ordered them all killed. And into that bloody panic walked a young man, barely more than a boy, from the conquered country, who asked for time, and prayed through the night to the invisible God, and came back in the morning and did the impossible. He told the king his own dream. A statue, Daniel said, enormous, a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron, feet of iron mixed with crumbling clay, and a stone, cut by no human hand, that struck the statue at its feet and shattered the whole thing to dust, and the wind carried it off like chaff, and the stone grew into a mountain that filled the earth. You are the head of gold, Daniel told him. You. After you, lesser kingdoms, weaker metals, the long decline of everything men build. And then a kingdom that no one builds, that no army raises, that breaks all the others and never ends. The king should have heard the warning in it. After you, lesser, decline. But men hear what they want. He heard the first part. He heard gold. He fell on his face before the boy. Imagine it, the king of the world on the floor before a captive. And he said, "Surely your God is the God of gods." For a moment, on that floor he was close, closer than he would be for a long time. But you cannot stay on the floor. You have to get up. And when he got up, he was the king again. The next thing he built was a statue of gold. Not a head of gold, the whole thing. Gold from the feet to the crown, towering on the plain of Dura, taller than any tree. He had heard a prophecy that said he was the gold, and the rest would fall. And his answer to the heavens was to make the whole man gold, top to bottom, and command every nation under him to bow when the music played. It was the most honest thing he ever did. It was his heart, cast in metal and stood upright in a field. Bow or burn. And 3 young men would not bow. Daniel's friends. They stood while a whole plain of people lay flat in the dust. The king, who had once lain in the dust himself before their God, now had the furnace heated 7 times hotter, and had them thrown in bound, and stood close enough to feel the heat tighten the skin of his face. And then he stood up, very slowly, because he was counting, and there were not 3 figures in the fire. There were 4. And the 4th, he said, in a voice that no one in his court had heard before, looked like a son of the gods. They walked out untouched, not a hair singed, not even the smell of smoke on their clothes. The smell. He would remember the absence of it for the rest of his life, the way you remember a sound that should have been there and wasn't. The king praised their God again. He made a decree. He promoted them, and again he was close, and again he got up off the floor of his own astonishment. And again, when he stood, he was only the king. The lesson kept washing over him like water over stone, and the stone stayed dry inside. Here is the thing about Nebuchadnezzar that the story will not let you forget. The thing that makes him not a monster, but a man. He kept being told the truth, and he kept almost believing it. He was not a fool. He had seen the dream he could not remember named aloud. He had counted 4 men in a fire meant for 3. He knew, in some buried room of himself, that there was a hand above his own. He had almost convinced himself, more than once, that he knew his place. Almost. That word is the whole tragedy. Almost is where most of us live. Years passed. Good years. The wars were won. The borders were quiet. The gardens grew. The king grew older and more at ease and more entirely sure of himself than he had ever been, which is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a soul. Not disaster, but a long, soft season of getting everything you want. And then, in that peace, the second dream came. A tree. In the middle of the earth, a single tree, and it grew until its top touched the sky and could be seen from the ends of the world. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit fed everyone, the beasts sheltered in its shade, the birds nested in its branches. Every living thing was fed by it. And then a voice, a holy one, came down from heaven and called out, and the voice said, "Cut it down, strip its branches, scatter its fruit, drive the animals from its shade, but leave the stump in the ground, bound with iron and bronze, in the wet grass of the field. Let it be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let his mind be changed from a man's to a beast's, and let 7 times pass over him, so that the living may know that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowliest of people." He woke afraid, he who feared nothing. He called the wise men, and they were silent, because they could see what it meant, and they did not want to be the ones to say it. And then he called for Daniel. By now Daniel was no longer a boy. He was a man of standing in the court, gray perhaps at the temples, trusted with the deepest counsels. The king trusted him the way you trust someone who has never once lied to you, even when the truth was the last thing you wanted. He told Daniel the dream, and Daniel stood there, and he said nothing. The text gives us this moment, and it is one of the most human moments in all of Scripture. Daniel was appalled, troubled. He stood silent, the words caught in his throat, and the king saw it on his face. And here is what the king said. Not, "Speak on pain of death." Not the old fury. He said, gently, almost tenderly, "Daniel, do not let the dream or its meaning trouble you." And Daniel, this man whose city this king had burned, whose people this king had carried into chains, this man who had every reason in the world to relish the prophecy, Daniel answered with grief. "My lord," he said, "I wish this dream were for your enemies. I wish it were about anyone but you." That is the relationship at the center of all of it. Not the king and his empire. The king and the one man who told him the truth and wept while he did it. The conqueror and the captive, who, somewhere across the long years, had stopped seeing the man who destroyed his home and started seeing a soul walking toward a cliff. Daniel did not gloat. Daniel begged. "The tree is you," he said. "You have grown until you fill the world, and you will be cut down. You will be driven out from people. You will live with the wild animals and eat grass like an ox, and be soaked with the dew of heaven, until 7 times pass, and you learn the one thing." He said it as gently as a man can say a terrible thing. "Until you learn that heaven rules." Heaven rules, my king. And then Daniel did something the prophecy did not require. He pleaded with him. "Please," he said, "break it off. Turn from the wrongs you have done. Show mercy to the poor. It may be that there will be a lengthening of your peace." There was still time. The voice from heaven had not yet fallen. The stump was not yet in the ground. a door stood open, and Daniel held it, and looked at the king with eyes full of everything he could not say, and waited. For 12 months, nothing happened. 12 months. The king walked free, lucid, whole. And we are not told that he prayed, or wept, or gave a single coin to a single beggar. We are told only that the months passed, and the warning faded the way warnings do when the disaster does not come on schedule, and the soft certainty crept back in. And then one evening he climbed to the roof, the same roof, the river below, the cook fires, the gardens stacked green against the dimming sky, the city breathing in the dusk. And he looked out over all of it, and the old feeling rose in his chest, warm and total, and it came out of his mouth before he could weigh it. Is this not great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power for the glory of my majesty? 1. My power, my glory. The word was still hanging in the air, still on his lips, the text says, the sound of it not yet faded, when the voice came from heaven. To you it is spoken, King Nebuchadnezzar. The kingdom has departed from you, and the door that had stood open for 12 months swung shut. We do not know exactly what it felt like from the inside, because a man cannot describe the loss of his own mind from within it. But we are told what it looked like from the outside, and it is among the most pitiable images in the Bible. The king of the world walked off the roof, and out of his palace, and out of his city, and into the field. His servants did not stop him. Perhaps they could not. His reason left him like a guest walking out the door, and what was left behind was something that crouched in the wet grass and did not know its own name. His hair grew long and matted, the chronicle says, like the feathers of an eagle. His fingernails grew long and curled like the claws of a bird. The hands that had pressed his name into 10,000 bricks, the hands that had finished the gardens and stripped the temple and signed the death of cities. Those hands learned to do nothing but tear at grass. He ate it like an ox. The dew of heaven, the same dew the dream had promised, settled on his bare shoulders every morning and ran down his back in cold beads, and he did not have the mind left to come in out of it. He who had looked down on every man from the highest roof now lived with his face to the ground, because that is where the grass is, and a beast looks down. 7 times passed over him, 7 seasons or 7 years, the long, slow turning of the dew and the heat, again and again, over a body that no longer remembered it had once worn a crown. Babylon, somewhere behind him, kept running. The empire did not collapse. The gardens were watered by other hands. The world he thought he held in his fist went on perfectly well without him, which is its own kind of sentence, to learn that the thing you thought needed you does not need you at all. And then, at the end of the days, the man tells us in his own words what happened. This is the most astonishing thing in the entire account, that the king himself wrote it down, the madness and the shame and all of it, and let it be read. He did not hide it. He published it to the ends of his empire. And the sentence he chose to mark the turning is so simple you could miss it. I lifted my eyes toward heaven. That is all. For 7 years his face had been down in the grass, because that is what a beast does. That is what a man does who has decided the only thing worth looking at is the ground he can own. And then, one morning, in a mind not yet his own, something turned his face upward. He lifted his eyes. He looked up. And he says, in the same breath, My reason returned to me. Not before, after. He did not get his mind back and then choose to look up. He looked up, and in the looking, the mind came home. The two were the same motion. The whole of his 7-year sentence had been about one direction. Down was the curse. Up was the cure. And the man who had built a mountain so that the world would crane its neck to look up at him, finally, in a field, drenched and broken and crawling, lifted his own neck and looked up at something higher than himself, and was healed. And the first thing he did with his returned mind was bless. He blessed the Most High. He praised the one who lives forever, whose kingdom does not depart, who does as he wills among the armies of heaven and the people of earth, and whom no one can stop and ask, "What are you doing?" Heaven rules. He finally said it. Daniel had said it to him years before, gently, with grief in his eyes. Heaven rules, my king. And now the king said it back to the sky, and meant it, and was free. His kingdom returned to him, greater than before. His counselors sought him out. The man came back to Babylon, and you would think the lesson of such a story would be the horror of the fall. But hear how he ends his own account, the last words we have from him. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and honor the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And he adds one more line, and it is the line that proves he finally understood the dream of the tree, the line that is the whole point of 7 years in the grass. Those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. He is able to humble. The king who once cast his own heart in gold and stood it up in a field, now stands in a different field and points up and tells the whole world the one thing it cost him his mind to learn. So what do we do with this? What does the strange, slow mercy of a king on his hands and knees have to do with you? Begin here. Pride is not loud. We imagine the proud man as the obvious tyrant on the roof, and he is in the story. But the thing that destroyed Nebuchadnezzar was not the boast. The boast was the symptom. The disease was the quiet, soft certainty that grew in him over years of getting what he wanted. The slow forgetting that he had been given anything at all. He believed his power was his own. His glory was his own. He looked at a city he had been given the strength and the years and the breath to build, and he saw only the work of his own hands. That is the lie at the heart of all of it. Not, I am great, but I am the source. I built, I made, mine. And the field, the dew, the 7 years of looking at the ground, all of it was God's terrible, patient way of teaching one man to lift his eyes and remember he was never the source of anything. And here is the turn that the whole Bible is bending toward. Nebuchadnezzar exalted himself, and he was humbled. He climbed, and he was brought down to the dirt until he learned to look up. But there is another king in the story of God, and he ran the road in the opposite direction. He did not grasp at glory that was rightfully his, and it was rightfully his, all of it. The head of gold, and the stone that breaks the kingdoms, and the mountain that fills the earth. Every bit of it was his by right. And he let it go. He came down. He left the highest roof in all of creation and walked into the field of this world and lived among us. He had no place to lay his head. He was drenched not in the dew of a meadow, but in the sweat of a garden and the blood of a hill. The hands that made the worlds learned to do a carpenter's work, and then learned to be nailed. He looked down, not in the madness of a beast, but in the love of a Savior, down at the people who had forgotten the source, down at every one of us crouched in our own grass, tearing at the things we think we own. And he came down to lift our eyes. Nebuchadnezzar was humbled so that he might be raised.
Jesus humbled himself, and because of that, God raised him and gave him the name above every name, so that every knee that the music of Babylon could never truly bend would one day bow gladly. The proud king was forced to his knees in a field. The humble king chose his knees in a garden. And the stone cut by no human hand, the kingdom that no army builds and no empire breaks, the mountain that fills the whole earth, that was never Babylon. It was never going to be Babylon. It was him. So lift your eyes. That is the whole of it. Wherever you are right now, whatever you have built and stamped your name into, whatever roof you climb to feel large, or whatever field you are crawling in, soaked and ashamed and certain you have fallen too far, the cure is the same as it was for the king. It is one motion. Look up. Not down at what you own, not down at what you have lost, not down at the ground where the beasts feed. Up. Because the moment that man lifted his eyes toward heaven, his reason returned to him, and the one he looked up at had been waiting the entire 7 years for him to turn his face. He is still waiting. He is able to humble the proud, yes, but he humbles in order to heal, and he brings down only so that he can lift up. And there is no field so far from the palace that the road home is closed. You are not the source. And that is the best news you have ever heard, because it means the weight of holding up your whole world was never yours to carry. Set it down. Lift your eyes. Heaven rules, and the one who rules it came all the way down to your grass to bring you home. If this story moved something in you, if you felt your own face turn upward even for a moment, subscribe and stay with us. There are more stories like this one, more kings, more captives, more impossible mercies, and we are telling every one of them, all the way down, until they all lead to the same stone, and the same mountain, and the same king who came down, so that we could be lifted up.